It will happen tomorrow. Trump announces historic Israel-Lebanon talks. WHO chief calls for protection of Lebanon's health infrastructure. Ceasefire with Israel. Entry point to talks, says Lebanon president. U.S. to negotiate with bombs until Iran ceasefire deal reached. U.S. President Donald Trump says leaders of Israel and Lebanon are set to speak for the first time in more than 3 decades. Trump said the call is aimed at easing tensions between the two sides amid ongoing conflict in the region. Lebanon has been drawn into the war following attacks by Hezbollah and subsequent Israeli military operations. Israeli strikes and ground actions in southern Lebanon have caused heavy casualties and large-scale displacement. Meanwhile, a Lebanese minister has condemned a recent strike that killed 4 paramedics during a humanitarian mission. He described the attack as a violation of international law and said the government is preparing legal action. The planned talks are being seen as a possible step toward reducing tensions. However, the situation on the ground remains volatile as fighting continues. The head of the World Health Organization has called for urgent protection of healthcare facilities in Lebanon. Director General Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus said hospitals, medical staff, and patients must be safeguarded amid ongoing attacks. He reported that a major hospital in southern Lebanon was damaged in recent strikes, injuring staff and destroying key medical facilities. According to the WHO, more than 100 attacks on healthcare sites have been recorded since the conflict escalated. These incidents have resulted in dozens of deaths and injuries, and forced several hospitals and clinics to shut down. Ghebreyesus also called for safe and uninterrupted humanitarian access across Lebanon. He stressed that medical services must continue without risk to both patients and healthcare workers. The warning highlights growing concerns over the impact of the conflict on civilian infrastructure and public health. Lebanon's President Joseph Aoun says a ceasefire with Israel could open the door to direct negotiations. He described a truce as a natural starting point for talks between the two countries. Aoun said Lebanon's priority is to stop attacks on civilians and the destruction of homes, especially in the south. He stressed that any negotiations must be led by Lebanese authorities to protect national sovereignty. The president also called for the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Lebanese territory. He added that the Lebanese army should then be deployed along international borders to restore stability. The comments come as efforts continue to reduce tensions and seek a diplomatic solution to the conflict. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says American strikes on Iran will continue until Tehran agrees to a deal on its missile and nuclear programs. Speaking at the Pentagon, Hegseth said the U.S. is using military pressure to push Iran toward negotiations. He claimed Iran's defense infrastructure has been heavily damaged and that U.S. forces can operate freely in its airspace. Hegseth described the strategy as combining military action with diplomacy, saying talks are ongoing despite Iran denying negotiations. He also confirmed that additional U.S. troops have been deployed to the region to increase pressure. Officials say thousands of targets have been struck since the conflict began in late February. The buildup of forces is intended to give the U.S. multiple military options while encouraging a diplomatic solution. The situation continues to affect global markets, particularly oil supplies through the Strait of Hormuz. The conflict remains unresolved, with both military and diplomatic efforts ongoing.